Welcome to GA235 Corporate Identity. This is week 6. We are going to discuss designing brand identity, applications, identification graphics. The objective for this week is better understand the graphic components that identify a brand. Some of the key terms that we will be discussing are stationery, letterhead, business card, branded environment, signage, and packaging. Identification graphics, communicating a brand message. All of these, as you can see here in this example, all of these are printed pieces that are all in the physical world. There's also digital world branding. Everything that you can think of that is a part of a company should be branded with their logo, should be consistent with their color scheme, their typography, and overall kind of layout and design, just to keep that brand message consistent and keep the integrity of the brand. So, identification graphics, the core concept, the logo, tagline, color or color palette, fonts, type sizes and weights, abbreviations and titles, all of that have to do with the identification graphics. And so for this one, we have the logo of KFC. Well, we have the color scheme, which is your white and your off-white color, red and black. So you got 4 colors there in that logo. The font, whatever specific font that KFC is in, that's going to be universal as well. Also the font for the tagline, there's the tagline, it's finger licking good, kind of gives more of like a handwriting kind of look to it too, to maybe just show that it's more natural, homemade in a sense. And then just overall, the placement of these graphics and where they go. Those are all important and need to be consistent from every piece of material that is created. So some more parts of identification graphics would be graphic elements, signature, illustrative elements, photographic elements, tone of voice, attitude of imagery and copy, and descriptive writing. And those can all be part of the advertisement. So if there was a KFC ad, that would have been a great addition for me to put in here. Could have shown all the different points of that. So we also have stationery, letterhead, business cards, branded environment, signage, and packaging, and I have a slide on each one of these. Stationery is a staple of business communications. It formally and visually represents the brand's quality and personality to several different audiences. It could be to the consumer, it can be to another business that they work with and are in partnerships with and have contracts with, and also employees. Now this stationery is usually consistent to all of these different groups. However, some companies may have specific types of stationery that only goes to customers, or that only goes to other businesses, or only goes to employees. And the reason for that is it might have different addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, and things like that, that is particular to those groups. And so that's why it would change. In terms of the overall look and design of it, probably not. It shouldn't change. It would just kind of swap out the contact information, but leave up the placement of the graphics and text and all that. This should be the same. So some component parts to a stationery system would be general letterheads. These are all the different types of letterheads. So general letterhead on a regular 8.5 by 11 sheet paper. Also have the long form letterhead, which is on your legal paper. And then you have your general envelopes, you have executive types of envelopes, executive letterheads, short and long. There's digital letterheads as well, fax cover sheets, and stuff that's particular to contracts. Now they should be fairly similar in look. Again, they're not going to try to veer away from that by designing different ones. As you can see in the example here, this one I would argue has borderline maybe too many graphics in a way, because the overall goal of the stationery is to just be a branded piece of paper, but the majority and the main information is going to be in the body of the letter, right? So therefore, whoever is writing the letter and they're printing it on there, you want to make sure that your graphics are outside of those printing boundaries. So as you can see with this one, I think it's pretty safe because you might have to hit the enter button a few times at the top to start your letter further down the page. But it looks like the bottom there is outside the margin, so you want to try to keep those graphics outside of the 1 inch margin. So from the edge of the paper all the way up to 1 inch around the whole thing would probably be what you should strive for. It could probably go a little outside, further out than 1 inch, but you don't want to do too much, especially on the sides. And you want to limit the graphics. For instance, this one would be perfectly fine if those two triangles, the orange and the pink triangle, both were deleted, because you have your logo and there's color in the logo and you can center that logo or so, and then you got the other information on the bottom. That would be perfectly sufficient. The thing is you don't want to overdo it with too many graphics on the stationery because it takes away from the information printed on it. Other types of stationery would be invoices, memos, large envelopes, window envelopes, internal correspondence, mailing labels, and such like that. Here's an example of a stationery, and it could get pretty creative depending on the type of business you're in. If you're in kind of more of maybe a creative advertising agency, well, they're going to have probably a little bit, they're going to push the envelope a little bit more on their graphics and their overall brand, because they want to try to stick out and they want to be creative. As you can see with this one, they kind of have these little hand drawings that appear on each of their letterheads and such. I would argue maybe if those are letterheads, it's kind of tough to see from the picture, but if so, they protrude pretty far into the document, so I'd say maybe make it a little bit smaller and such. But you can see the consistency. Even though each drawing is different, it is within the same style. They also use the same text font and their same color schemes. Another example here too, as you can see, the consistency with this stationery for Wayne Kozak, Rethink Canada. Stationery letterhead. A letterhead is a sheet of stationery or digital page with the name and address of the brand, the parent company, the group, or organization printed on it. So you want to have your company name, which is usually going to be in the form of a logo, and you want to have contact information, address, phone number, and nowadays, of course, a website, maybe email address as well. Often part of a larger visual identity stationery system utilizing consistent elements. Here's a creative piece of letterhead, but I would argue if this is supposed to be a letterhead, where is all the text going to go? You're going to print text on this busy background, so I would say probably not the best idea. Your graphics should be, like we've seen before, on the outsides. As you can see with this one, they're on the borders, they're on the top, they're on the footer bottom here, and it leaves a nice open space for the text to be written on, as opposed to this one where if the text was written on it, it would be definitely hard to read. Important points to think about with stationery letterhead is design enough space for written content, provide vital contact information, utilize consistent elements within the entire brand identity, design a look and feel consistent with the entire brand identity, and design a second page which includes the logo and some of the design elements. That concludes this part of the presentation.